Chapter 22. Ronnie. 4 weeks later. From John Jones at cherubcampus.com. Sent on the 23rd of March 2006, 8:51 a.m. To Dr. Terence McCafferty. Copied for Zara Asker and Dennis King. Subject: Survivor's Mission. Dear all, with regard to your recent emails, I'm afraid there continues to be little progress in our mission to infiltrate the Survivor's Ark. It has now been nearly a month since James, Dana and Lauren moved into the commune and took the aptitude test. The extremely strict rules on personal property inside the commune make it difficult to contact Abigail and the 3 cherubs on a regular basis. Mobile phones would easily be spotted, though ACES technical support teams are looking into providing small radio transmitters that can be hidden under the inner sole of a training shoe when not in use. We hope to have these devices in place within days. I have mainly been communicating through James Adams, meeting him inside a nursing home where he plies a confectionery route after school. Although he tries to put a brave face on things, I get the impression that James is depressed and worn down. He often seems listless, and his concentration wanders during our conversations. I have also met Abigail on a number of occasions, and her behaviour is similar. All 4 agents have managed to avoid being lured by the cult's mental control techniques, but the mixture of high activity levels and limited opportunities for sleep are taking their toll. Chloe and I met with ACES officials yesterday. Miriam Longford attended and made a useful contribution. She has been in contact with ex-survivors whom she has counselled to ask questions about admission to the boarding school inside the Ark. Acceptance of high-ability pupils into the survivors' boarding school usually happens within 1 or 2 weeks of them taking an admissions test. This is because bright youngsters have a tendency to ask probing questions, combined with a natural taste for rebellion. It is therefore in the cult's interests to quickly move these youngsters to a remote location where they can take absolute control of their lives. Unfortunately, for reasons we do not understand, this has not happened to James, Dana and Lauren. After consultation with the ACES team, we have decided to leave our agents in place for a further 2 weeks. But we feel that the mission's chances of succeeding are shrinking rapidly. ACES has already begun considering alternative strategies, including the risky possibility of a large-scale police/military raid on the Survivor's Ark. I hope to be able to come back to you soon with better news. Yours, John Jones. P.S. Zara, thank you so much for organising my daughter's birthday present. This email contains sensitive data. Do not attach or resend without using random bit encryption. James had PE on Thursday afternoons and needed 2 sweltering hours playing touch football like a hole in the head. To make things worse, the school didn't have showers, so he arrived at the care home stinking of grass and BO. Fortunately, he'd sweet-talked one of the care assistants into letting him use the shower in an unoccupied room. As he stripped off, James caught himself in the mirror and wasn't impressed. His clothes were ragged, the man who'd clipped his hair at the commune was a butcher, and something about the survivor's lifestyle was playing havoc with his skin. James had broken out in spots, especially on the back of his neck, where he currently sported 3 giant whiteheads. He was surprised by a knock at the door as he sat on a bare metal bed frame, pulling on a clean sock. "Hiya," Elliot said brightly as he stepped in. "What's occurring?" James shrugged as he wriggled his foot into his trainer. "I can't go round stinking the joint up." "I like that," Elliot said, wagging his finger. "Initiative." But James could tell that Elliot didn't like it. It wasn't that he objected to James taking a shower. He just didn't like any survivor deviating from his plans. Elliot took every tiny breach of the timetable as a threat to his authority. "But next time, run it by me first, okay?" he added. "What are you doing here?" James asked. "I'm afraid we have a situation," Elliot said. "Well, what situation?" "I got a call from a Mr. Wildman, Emily's son. I tried to arrange her new will through a friendly solicitor, but there was confusion over some property Emily owns, and the idiot went and contacted her family solicitor, who turns out to be a friend of Emily's son. So the son finds out, and, cut to the chase, half an hour ago, I get a call from Emily. She's all upset. Her son is here, and he's refusing to leave until he's talked to me." "Is he angry?" James asked, secretly delighted that the survivors might not get their hands on the old girl's money. "I don't suppose finding out that his mother has left $2 million to charity will have him dancing a jig," Elliot said. "I'm going to see if I can talk him around, but I wanted you alongside me. Emily seems terrifically fond of you, and people tend to behave more reasonably in front of a larger audience." James grinned as he pulled his clean shirt over his head and began rolling a deodorant stick under his pits. "Anything I can do to help, boss?" "Those are truly words of an angel," Elliot said, giving James a pat on the head that made him feel like a dog. Emily's room was 50 metres down a corridor. They found her sitting out on the patio with her son. There was a jug of milk and vodka and a couple of half-eaten fish and chip lunches on the table between them. "Ronnie Wildman," the son said, introducing himself as he shook Elliot's hand. He was a short fellow, but well built, with half a head of hair. James shook his hand too. "Nice to meet you." Ronnie nodded. "My mother's taken a shine to you, young fella." "So," Elliot said, as he and James took up chairs around the table, "I understand you wanted to speak with me?" "Oh, I did," Ronnie said ominously, his eyes lighting up as he slid a folded document out of a leather organiser. "This is a copy of my mother's new will. Miraculously, she seems to have revised the terms so that instead of leaving everything to me, 90% of her money goes to something called the Survivors Development Foundation." Emily interrupted. "It's my money, son. You've already squandered your share. I sold off the house to cover your last disastrous scheme." Ronnie snatched an angry look at his mother. "Well, I don't think that's what Dad would have wanted. But if you want to donate a few bucks to charity, let's talk about Oxfam or the Red Cross. Not these survivor lunatics." Elliot smiled and spoke smoothly. "Mr. Wildman, the survivors' religious activities and our fundraising efforts for the world's poor are totally separate operations. We work in conjunction with all of the other major development agencies around the world. Last year, we opened up more than 400 hospital beds in some of..." James jolted with fright as Ronnie cut Elliot off by smashing his fist against the table. "Cut the bullshit, you smooth-talking son of a..." "Ronnie!" Emily snapped. "I told you to keep that leash on that temper of yours." "Elliot, would you like something to drink?" Elliot nodded. "A strong black coffee would be nice." Emily smiled at James. "Would you be a dear? Take whatever you want for yourself. There's Coke in the fridge." James was relieved to step out from the tense atmosphere around the table. He filled the kettle up to boil and opened a can of Sprite for himself. The conversation outside on the patio got louder as he sprinkled Survivor brand coffee granules into a cup. By the time the water boiled, Elliot and Ronnie were standing up, facing each other off across the table. "I'll make you sorry you did this," Ronnie shouted. "Mr. Wildman, if we can just talk this through in a civilised fashion, I'm sure we'll be able to reach some sort of compromise. Civilized? The survivors are the biggest bunch of money-grabbing freaks going. Joel Regan will only get his mitts on my money over my dead body. It's not your money, Ronnie, his mother reminded him. As far as James was concerned, the two men could kill each other. But Emily looked stressed out, and he felt really sorry for her. He didn't want to carry out the boiling hot coffee when it looked like World War III was about to erupt, so he stood inside the doorway holding the steaming cup and saucer. It's all mind games with you people, Ronnie growled, tapping his finger against his temple. You've messed up her head. She's in no fit state to make decisions like these anymore. From what your mother tells me, you've squandered plenty already, Elliot snarled back, losing his slippery cool for the first time James could remember. I bet you've got all your big shot lawyers backing you up as well, Ronnie said. Elliot smiled. If you choose to call the legality of your mother's will into question, I'm confident that... Ronnie's posture tightened. He snatched a fish knife off the table and screamed as he lunged at Elliot. Don't you grin at me like that! Elliot tried to back away, but got his foot tangled around the leg of his chair. Ronnie plunged the knife into Elliot's stomach. Emily howled out as Elliot crashed backwards into the glass patio doors. Spend it now! Ronnie shouted as he pulled out the knife. Ronnie! Emily screamed desperately. Spend it! Ronnie repeated as he lunged again. Spend it! As James saw the second stab, he put down the coffee mug and backed into Emily's room. Ronnie had a big knife and a murderous rage. This wasn't a time for half measures. He grabbed Emily's plastic kettle jug, which was still half full of boiling water. He unplugged the cord and ripped off the lid. The second stab had been aimed at Elliot's chest, but he turned away, and the only damage was to the shoulder pad of his jacket. As Ronnie lunged a third time, James scrambled onto the patio and threw the boiling water at his head. It hit from close range, making the stocky man howl as he stumbled backwards, clutching his face. But anger can overcome a great deal of pain, and James knew he'd only have an instant while his opponent was stunned to take him down easily. As Ronnie staggered, James clenched the handle of the plastic jug and battered him in the face with it. The plastic splintered in a dozen shards, and Ronnie was unconscious even before his head hit the patio with a hollow thunk. James snatched the bloody knife from Ronnie's limp hand before turning and studying the growing red stain on Elliot's shirt. Emily had hauled herself out of her chair and was making her way inside. Elliot waved his hand, indicating that he wanted James to move close so he could say something. Call Judith, he gasped. Keep the cops out of this. James nodded uncertainly as he reached into Elliot's jacket and pocketed his mobile phone. He tore open the bloody shirt, making buttons fly in all directions. The wound was too messy to see the extent of the cut, but James knew the number one priority was to stop the blood loss. He pulled his t-shirt over his head, folded it into a square, and pressed it against Elliot's stomach. Listen, James said, as he placed Elliot's hand on the cloth. Hold it in place as tight as you can. It was an accident, Elliot repeated. Call Judith. Don't speak to the police. All right, James said angrily. Maybe I should try and stop you bleeding to death first, eh? Emily had hit the emergency alarm beside her bed. James stepped back from Elliot, greatly relieved as a male and female nurse scrambled onto the patio and took control. Sweet Jesus, the male nurse said, when he saw Elliot. He looked up at James holding the mobile. "Call an ambulance. We can't deal with this here." The female nurse crouched over Ronnie and inspected the blistered skin on his face, while James dialed for an ambulance. As the call rang in his ear, he noticed Emily collapse to the floor beside her bed.